So I want to discuss the current rent and housing crisis we have here in New York. And if we want to understand how we reached this point where we are exactly 1 month away from the eviction moratorium expiring and tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers are behind on rent without any relief in sight, if we want to figure out how we got here, then we have to go back to 2020. So last year, the state legislature passed a law creating the Rent Relief Fund, which put the Division of Homes and Community Renewal, HCR, in charge of structuring and implementing the program. Now in 2020, back when we were still in the throes of the pandemic, we got reports that New York State rejected more than half of the 94,000 applicants because they didn't meet certain criteria. By May of 2021, New York had $100 million for their rent relief program, but about 4/5 of the applications during the second round were rejected, but the program ultimately distributed $47.5 million in payments to 18,000 households. Fast forward to last week, we received an update on the most recent rent relief program, and this time the state's Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance was in charge of administering the $2.7 billion in rent relief. This program was designed to allow landlords to apply for the funds in addition to the tenants, something that multiple housing groups advocated for as a way to make it easier for the money to flow. Last week, we found out that New York's COVID-19 rent relief program had distributed just $117,000 out of $2.7 billion, which was meant to help New Yorkers who haven't been able to afford their rent. And many critics have complained that the application requirements have been far too stringent. Now, a few days ago, we received word that Governor Cuomo was relaxing documentation requirements and actually increasing the amount of people he has working on the relief program. And the New York State Assembly plans on holding an August 10th hearing to examine the technical problems that applicants have been dealing with and the reasons why New York is still one of the last states to distribute money from its emergency fund. So we know that hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers are struggling with rent. And so where does this leave the landlords who've received irregular rent rolls for the last year and a half? As you know, there's been an eviction moratorium in place protecting renters, and while the national moratorium on evictions just expired July 31st, New York's moratorium will last until the end of August. The New York State eviction moratorium was extended several times throughout the pandemic, but it's unclear if it'll be extended beyond August, while President Biden has been pushing Congress to extend the national moratorium, although it seems unlikely with the short timeline. All while New York landlords have become increasingly frustrated with New York's eviction moratorium and decided to take their case to the U.S. Supreme Court, where they filed for an emergency injunction to stop the eviction ban, claiming that the law violates their constitutional right to due process by keeping them from pursuing evictions against tenants who claim financial hardship caused by the pandemic. This group of landlords previously filed a case in the Eastern District of New York back in May, but Judge Gary Brown dismissed their claims, explaining that although the landlords had clearly demonstrated irreparable harm from the moratorium, they couldn't show how halting the moratorium would help them recover. So let's definitely keep an eye on this new court filing from these landlords. Now, although many landlords in New York City are wealthy, some with large portfolios and plenty of assets, there are also some smaller homeowners that maybe own one multifamily property but have struggled to pay their mortgage, perhaps because one of their tenants couldn't afford to pay their rent. So we recently got word that President Biden plans on expanding aid for mortgage borrowers who have fallen behind on payments during the pandemic. According to a Crain's Business article, enhanced assistance will be provided to homeowners with government-backed mortgages who've been negatively impacted by the pandemic, cutting some monthly payments by roughly 25%. Bear in mind that earlier this year, Biden extended a moratorium on foreclosures and the time period during which homeowners could enroll in mortgage forbearance programs if they had government-backed loans. So during this time, lenders have been allowing borrowers to pause or reduce payments. But remember, forbearance doesn't erase what you owe or the interest compounding, and so homeowners still have to repay missed or reduced payments once the moratorium expires. And it's estimated that roughly 7.2 million American households have used the forbearance option. So where do we go from here? Well, I'm honestly not sure, especially considering that these new COVID variants are wreaking havoc around the country, and there's still plenty of people out of work or disconnected from quality employment opportunities. At this point, I do know that we need more outreach and education about what's going on and the resources available, so I'm actually including a link to the New York State Emergency Rental Assistance Program for any low and moderate income households at risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. The state is offering help with rental and utility arrears, so this is money that you may owe, and temporary rental assistance with upcoming rent. Now keep in mind that landlords also need to submit documentation to corroborate the information on your application, so be prepared to contact the property owner once you begin the process. Well, that's all I have. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. More real estate content on the way.